Please, come over here.
The arrest of Duane Keffe D. Davis for the murder of Tupac in September of 2023 has drawn a new wave of attention to his nephew, Orlando "Baby Lane" Anderson, who was always the prime suspect for Tupac's murder and who Keffe himself claimed pulled the trigger on the night that Tupac was fatally shot in Las Vegas in 1996.
I gave it to Dre. Dre was like, no. And Lane's like, give it, pop him too.
So Orlando shot across Dre?
He leaned over on the window, we rolled down the window, popped him.
I just want to let everybody know, you know what I'm saying, I didn't do it.
Orlando Anderson would meet his own violent end in a hail of bullets just a year and a half later, back home on the streets of Compton. This is the story of how that happened, and how the murder of Tupac may have contributed to Baby Lane's own downfall. On the morning of May 29, 1998, a little over a year and a half after the murder of Tupac, Orlando Anderson's great-grandmother, the matriarch of his and Keffe D's family, passed away at the age of 85. Just the day before, Keffe D's home had been raided by the FBI, and he and other members of his crew were arrested under the Continuing Criminal Enterprise statute, which is often used to pursue drug traffickers. So Keffe is in jail when his nephew meets his end that following day on May 29th. And that day, Keffe claims he talked to his nephew for the last time on the phone from jail, where Keffe warned him, "Be safe out there." Around 3 o'clock that afternoon, Anderson and his close friend Michael Lil Al Duro are at the well-known Compton burger stand called Mom's Burgers, sitting in a Chevy Blazer that may have belonged to Anderson's girlfriend or ex-girlfriend. And across the street was Rob's Car Wash, which was reportedly a popular hangout for gang members. That car wash has since been torn down and is the site of the new Compton High School. And Mom's Burgers across the street has also been torn down. Owl and Baby Lane grew up together as kids, their families knew each other, and they were very close friends. On this day, Anderson was allegedly upset over getting burned on a drug deal. And you'll find that as this story unfolds, there are multiple versions of events, because what exactly happened is kind of murky and changes depending on who's telling the story. One version of events cited just an unpaid debt. Another version claimed that he had discovered after leaving the scene of a deal that the product he had purchased was light, but was told by the sellers that he knew the rules and that once he left with the goods, the deal was done. And in yet another version, which is the one that I choose to believe, Anderson and/or his friend DeAndre Smith tried to sell a half kilo of cocaine to someone named Daniel, and the guy took off with it without paying, owing them $3,500. He may have also started going around town telling people that he'd ripped them off. And Daniel had supposedly been told that since then, the debt had doubled to $7,000. While sitting across the street from the car wash with Duro, Baby Lane allegedly spotted Daniel at the car wash. But unfortunately for everyone involved, he was accompanied by the fearsome uncle and nephew duo of Michael and Jerry Stone, both alleged corner pocket Compton Crips. And OG Michael Stone is also known as Big Stone because he supposedly stood at 6'8" and weighed 300 pounds. And in Compton, it seemed everyone knew Orlando Anderson as the guy who shot Tupac. Even though DeAndre Smith had also tried taking credit for the famous murder, since Smith had allegedly been in the back seat with Anderson when the murder was committed, it was Orlando who had achieved legendary status in Compton over the famous murder. And in addition to the bad drug deal, I also wonder if the death that morning of Anderson's beloved great-grandmother may have also played a factor in what Lando did next. But Owl Duro also had a fearsome reputation in Compton. Here's Keffe's friend Terrence Brown talking about him with detectives.
So now, Michael, Owl, if you think Al ducking out, you ain't heard Al. Because if you say people will try to kill him, people will be ducking from him.
Well, I know he's He's a killer.
So he can go on Glencoe. A killer can go where he want to go.
And in Keffe's book, he refers to Durow throughout simply as the Reaper. In another version of this story, Anderson first spotted the Stones when he was alone and then went and got Durow as backup. Regardless, Anderson and Durow pulled into the car wash and confronted the Stones and, assumedly, Daniel. Words were exchanged, guns were drawn. And of course, there are different versions of what happened next. In one version, Baby Lane and Owl tell the Stones that their beef is with Daniel, not with them. And in another version, Orlando Anderson convinced the Stones to lower their weapons or put them away, and then started shooting, still sitting behind the wheel of his Blazer, not realizing one of the Stones still had his gun at the ready. Whether or not that's how it went down, at the trial that followed in 1999, it was reportedly proven that Anderson fired the first shots, and then the Stones returned fire. All 4 people involved were reportedly hit. The only person left unscathed was, ironically, Daniel, the person the 2 Southside Crips had the issue with. Mortally wounded during the shooting, Orlando Anderson allegedly dropped his gun, but then Durow picked it up and also fired rounds at the Stones before Anderson and Durow sped away, with Anderson still behind the wheel. Keffe has claimed that Owl told him later that everybody at the car wash was shooting at them. Owl and Baby Lane's getaway didn't make it far. Anderson was seriously wounded and only made it a few blocks before coming to a stop in the bullet-riddled Blazer. The front tire was flat, and Anderson had been hit in the chest, and he told Owl that he couldn't feel his legs. Owl allegedly handed their gun to a nearby teenager and told them to get rid of it, or he ditched it himself behind Compton High School. Compton Police Lieutenant Reggie Wright Sr. and gang detectives Tim Brennan and Bobby Ladd were standing in the police station parking lot when they heard the gunshots just 6 blocks away. Racing to the scene, Wright Sr. was flagged down by Durow, who was standing in the middle of the street. He shouted, "Reg, they shot Lane." Wright put Owl in handcuffs, and it appeared to him that Anderson was already dead. In another version of this story, another Compton cop nicknamed Cameo asked Anderson, "Hey, did you kill Tupac?" as he was being pulled out of the Blazer. And in a response eerily similar to Tupac's last "fuck you" words to a bike cop in Las Vegas, Anderson supposedly responded, "Fuck you, Cameo." And if true, those were his last words. Baby Lane was rushed to Martin Luther King Jr. Drew Medical Center, nicknamed Killer King by Compton's residents, but they couldn't save him. Orlando Anderson, Tupac's alleged killer, was dead himself at the age of 23. It had barely been a year and a half since that night in Vegas. Detectives Tim Brennan and Bobby Ladd claim in their book, Once Upon a Time in Compton, that at the hospital they learned that Jerry Stone was already dead, and they attempted to speak to Michael Stone before he was wheeled into surgery, but he was uncooperative and then died on the operating table. So with his final act, it seemed that Orlando Anderson took 2 more lives with him on the way out. The neighborhood reportedly reeled from the loss of 3 prominent gang members from a single shooting. It's also speculated that due to Anderson's reputation, fueled largely by Tupac's murder, that the Stones may have been on higher alert when the confrontation started, causing the situation to escalate faster than it normally would have. Compton detectives Brennan and Ladd claimed that Orlando Anderson's mother spotted them at the hospital and shouted, "Are you happy now? You've tried to get him since Tupac's murder, and now he's dead. I bet you're happy." And there's at least one group that is reportedly happy that day. Journalist Lena Nozizwe contacts Death Row Records for comment and is reportedly told, "Tupac is up in heaven beating Orlando Anderson's ass." Vibe magazine allegedly refused to print that quote. Michael Durow was rewarded for surviving with 3 life sentences without parole plus 49 years, with prosecutors successfully arguing for special circumstances because the shooting technically qualified as a drive-by. Orlando Anderson left behind 4 children. He and his great-grandmother were given a joint funeral, and they share a grave marker. The funeral program referenced 3 special and dear friends of Anderson's, naming Michael Duro, DeAndre Smith, and Anderson's attorney, Edie Fall, the same lawyer who would represent Keffe off and on over the years, and who even assisted him with finding an attorney in Nevada after his arrest for Tupac's murder in 2023. Anderson's funeral program also included a note written to Anderson by Duro, signing it, "Lando, I love you, your best friend ever in life, Little Owl." And SS, like always, I got your back to the end. As of today, Owl has spent more than half his life in prison for having Baby Lane's back. Photos from Orlando Anderson's grave show DeAndre Smith and others wearing t-shirts memorializing Anderson, and posing over his grave, flashing Southside Crip gang signs. The following year, Anderson's half-brother, with whom he'd founded a record label called Success Records, dropped their only release, a mixtape called Platinum Heat, the compilation. The mob pyrus around Death Row Records never got street justice for Tupac's murder, but an associate of Suge Knight's who sent him a letter in prison the day Orlando Anderson was killed, informing him of the death, may have summed up a lot of people's feelings, writing, "If he had something to do with Tupac's death, then maybe the scales are balanced." Probably very little solace for either family.